Hello there, World of Tankers. I'm Blitz, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 picks for the most overpowered premiums in World of Tanks Blitz. Now, before I do get into this, I just want to say I'm not going to be putting any low-tier vehicles, so tier 5 or below, like the Keniyatsu. Yeah, it is probably the most overpowered, but I honestly feel that if you're a good player, you can do well in a tank like the Panzer III, or pretty much any standard tier 3 vehicle at that. So this is going to be more tanks like the Smasher, higher tier vehicles where you actually have to require skill to do decent in them, but if you know what you're doing, they are insanely overpowered. So of course, if you do like this type of video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. We're growing over 200 subscribers every single day, and every little button click does help out the channel so much. So please make sure to help out the channel if you do like this type of content. But without further ado, let's get straight into the video. In the number 5 spot, we have the Chieftain Mark 6. Now, this is one of the best heavies currently performing in my garage, and the reason for that is just because it has every single statistic going for it. It comes with 10 degrees of gun depression, it has very good turret armor, it has a very good upper plate, it's weak on the lower plate, and yeah, its tracks, you really don't want to get hit by them. But it has very, very good armor in the right positions. As well, it's got an excellent gun. 3,000 damage per minute, it has some of the best aiming time in the game, and that's why it is precision fire accurate. As well, its Hess shells have 100 millimeters of standard penetration, and if you're running calibrated, I think it goes up to 110, which means that you're easily penning through the sides of mediums, the rear of even some of the biggest, baddest heavy tanks, and you're taking off 550 hit points on average. So it is just such a devastating tank. It's flexible in pretty much any scenario you go to. It's got very nice standard penetration. Now, I know a lot of you might say in the comments that this isn't necessarily an overpowered tank, and yes, while I do agree with that, I wanted to throw a tier 10 vehicle in here, and I honestly feel that Chieftain Mark 6 is one of the best tanks you can pick up, especially for it only being about $50 when it does come into the store. Hitting the number 4 spot, we have the T6 Dracula. Now, this tank has been a fan favorite ever since it came into the game like 4 years ago. It is an extremely old tank. Now, the reason I rated this tank so strong in the most overpowered category is just because of how ludicrously fast this tank is. It has a power to weight ratio of 39.58, and that gives it an amazing top speed of 65 kilometers per hour. This is faster than some of the light tanks in acceleration and top speed at tier 7. As well, it goes 20 in reverse, and because it does weigh actually a very beefy 33.35 tons, it's extremely good at ramming light tanks. If you're ramming an M41 Bulldog, a T71, you tear them to pieces, and that's something that this tank is notorious for doing. As well, it has the best dispersion factors while moving, rotating the tank, rotating the turret, and after shot for all the medium tanks in its class. It comes with 10 degrees of gun depression, 20 degrees of gun elevation. It comes with the fastest turret traverse speed in the game. There is really nothing on this tank that is bad, of course, but the armor. And you'd think, well, it's a very weak tank, and in fact it is. It's literally based off an AMX CDC. However, it has spaced armor all over the side of it. So a lot of people think, hey, it's a Dracula, it's quick, it's got no armor. I'm looking at it with my KV2 and it looks like I can pen the entire side of it. You shoot HE at it, bam, only does 300 damage. While it does hurt, 300, 400 damage, a 152 would be taking off. You cannot penetrate high explosive anywhere on the side of a Dracula because it does have these side skirts that are full HE proof. So it is such a troll tank to go up against. It's very hard to take out, and it is an excellent tank. Not to mention its premium ammo as well is sitting at around 240 millimeters of penetration. There's really not one bad statistic about this tank. I guess you could say the damage per minute isn't spectacular, but honestly, the tank is so good in every other aspect, it way more than makes up for it. And I even forgot to mention this. This tank's tracks cannot be destroyed. While they can actually be taken out, as soon as they are taken out, they immediately repair. You don't need to use your repair kit. You'll spin out, but that's about it. You don't ever have to use a repair kit on this tank. In the number 3 spot, we have the Helsing HO. Now, this is another fan favorite that has also been in the game a very long time, and I personally hate going up against a tank like this. Now, the Helsing not only can go 60 kilometers per hour, it also has a very nice power to weight ratio of 20.02. It doesn't have the best traverse speed at 37.23, but that's not really the main point of this tank. It has a double shotgun which fires the second shell 0.1 seconds after it fires the first, first, and it deals 200 damage each shot, so it deals 400 on average. Now first of all, if you're loading high explosive, it's dealing 300 on average, but it's 2 shells, so it deals 600 average high explosive damage, which is really brutal in this tank, and you'll actually see me use it in this replay here. Not to mention, it has very nice shell velocity, and its reload time is only 8.86 seconds. That is insane. It gets a damage per minute of 2,633. While its penetration isn't spectacular at 170, it's just the ability for this tank to be quick. It actually has very troll and just really good armor for how quick the tank is. So it's quick, it's got really good armor, it's got an amazing, really troll gun, and really you never want to come up against this tank on the battlefield. In fact, the only balancing factor I find on this vehicle is that its premium rounds only have 220mm of penetration, which, yeah, isn't going to be able to get through tanks like a VK100 or a Tiger II from the front, but honestly, if you're in a tier 7 matchup against light tanks or some of the tier 7 mediums on the enemy team, you are able to smash them to pieces because this tank is so devastating on the battlefield. Jumping straight into the number 2 spot is the WZ-120-1FT. Now it's very hard for a tier 8 vehicle to be just so overpowered on a level that this tank is, because of course at tier 8 you're actually playing people that are decently skilled. Tier 7, of course, you might be playing against tier 6 players that don't know what they're doing, so it's a lot easier to just troll around in a tank like the Dracula or the Helsing. The WZ-120, you're playing up against tier 9 opponents, and it still shreds them to pieces. Now the reason for that being is, first of all, it has 2,908 damage per minute, which is really good on its own for a tier 8 tank destroyer. But not to mention, it comes with 248mm of standard pen, loading premium that's 310, which is pretty much enough to get through a mouse's upper cheeks, enough to get through a mouse's lower plate, so you could penetrate tier 10s easily with this gun. As well, it has excellent aiming time at 1.72 seconds. That is quicker than a Scorpion G. Dispersion values at 0.326 are excellent once again. While moving the tank when rotating it, even after shot, the dispersion values are almost best in class. The only issue with this tank is that it has 6 degrees of gun depression, and honestly, because it is such a small little wedge, you really don't worry about gun depression that much because you're always running around the map bouncing shells as you do get shot at. The tank goes 50 kilometers per hour because it's built on the chassis of a Type 59. It only does weigh 36 tons, but because of that, it has an excellent effective power-to-weight ratio of 17.72. Its traverse speed of 48.60 makes it able to outturn tanks like T-49s, RU-251s. It's extremely hard to outflank this tank. And it's also a very small target. Because of that, it's actually the best camouflage rating out of every tier 8 tank destroyer in the game at 44% while sitting still. That is excellent. This tank is honestly crazy if you do come up against one. And the craziest thing about it is that even while it is super quick, it's got an amazing gun, it's got great penetration, it's got great aiming time, everything like that going for it. It also has amazing troll armor. Its upper plate is sitting at around 230 to 250 millimeters thick. If you're angling that upper plate at a very steep slope, or not even a crazy amount, just using your 6 degrees of gun depression, all AP shells, unless they can use the 3 calibers rule, will be bouncing right off of the upper plate. The side armor has a very troll bar that's around 300 millimeters thick of spaced armor that T-49s struggle to penetrate the side of this tank with. It is just so troll to penetrate this tank in almost every single spot. The really crazy thing is that the game you're seeing here literally took me 1 battle to play. Most of these tanks here that you're seeing in these replays only took me about 1 to 2 battles to get a replay out for. But this tank was 1 game. I did 4,400 damage or something like that. I bounced a crazy amount of shells, fought tanks like Object 252s right up in their face, out damage permitting them, penning them right through the front without even sweating at all. And in the same time, didn't even get a mastery. So that just shows you how well this tank is performing on average with players that do know how to really work the damage. It's a really overpowered tank, and while you could argue that tanks like the Carnarvon Action 10 are overpowered, this thing is on a different level of overpowered. And finally, in the number 1 position, we have the Smasher. Now, I'm guessing a lot of you guys probably already knew I was putting this tank in the number 1 position, and it's a pretty good reason why. Literally, in the name, it tells you the description of the tank. It smashes, and it smashes everything that comes in front of it. It carries a 152mm cannon, the same type of one you'd find on a SU-152. But, oh wait, what's that? This tank is more accurate than the SU-152 tank destroyer. It's got better aiming time, and it carries the same amount of heat penetration and high explosive pen. What? Yeah, that's wargaming for you on the Smasher. Literally, grab a tank destroyer, which doesn't have as many hit points, doesn't have as much armor, and let's strap that exact same gun onto a heavy tank and make it better in some of these statistics. Now, of course, the damage per minute is a little bit worse, but it really doesn't matter that much when you're sitting at 1500 hit points and you're able to nuke people with 250mm of premium penetration. I run calibrated on this tank, which brings it up to 275. That is enough to penetrate most tier 10 opponents, let alone tier 6s. Most tier 6 matches, I load the high explosive and I'm able to nuke thousands of hit points right off of poor little tier 6 mediums and lights. Even some of the heavies you can rip 1,000 hit points off of if you do manage to score a high explosive shot into them. The Smasher is broken in almost every single way. It's quick, it's quicker than a KV2, which doesn't make sense again. It's got an excellent power to weight ratio for how tall this thing is. It's got troll spaced armor on the side of it. You cannot penetrate the front of it because it has buffed armor with high explosive. When you go up against a KV2 in a KV2, of course you can always one-shot each other. Smasher doesn't have that issue because it has buffed frontal armor compared to the normal KV2, so you can't even pen it with high explosive on the front. It is just such a troll tank in almost every single characteristic, and that's why it's such an overpowered vehicle. But the craziest thing I find is that people will argue with me and tell me that this tank is not overpowered. This game you're seeing here was a bad game for me in this tank. I didn't do well, and I still managed to get out 3,000 damage. This was a bad game. I can do, on a good game in this tank, 5,000, even 6,000 damage sometimes. It is just a crazy, overpowered, broken premium vehicle, or should I say collector. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, if you agree with my opinions. As I said in the beginning, I didn't want to put tanks like the Kenyatta in here because you can seal club in a variety of low tier tanks. And yes, while the Kenyatta is the king of overpowered seal clubbers, I feel that it still isn't more skill-based, while these tanks you actually have to require a little bit of skill to do very, very well in them. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button down below, as it does help out the channel so much. Of course, if you didn't like it, well, you know what to do. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to hit that button as well, as it does help out the channel so much. But other than that, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video, and I'll see you in the next one.